So when we see the likes of Bob Geldof and Bono receiving knighthoods and Nobel Peace Prizes, just remember that they have made the lives of African children worse. So do you know when you see these super viral YouTube videos that say things just got worse for fill in the blanks? Well, normally that's just clickbait and people are trying to get you to watch their video. But in the case of Bono and this particular video, things really did just get worse. I'm going to get into it all. Before I do, if you can do me a favor and like the video, subscribe and share it if you can. I appreciate all the new subscribers that have come on board in the last couple of days. Let's dive into these crazy stories of our good friend Bono.
I want people to know that I'm worth something, that I matter.
You could probably pick any one of the woke talking points and you know what side of the aisle Bono would be sitting on, right? Recently, Donald Trump has highlighted what has been going on in South Africa to the white farmers, and it's absolutely disgusting, and I've covered it a lot on this channel. And I think that there's a huge correlation between what is happening there and what is happening in Western countries as a whole. So I think there was really good work done there highlighting it. I didn't think that I was going to be talking about Bono and South Africa in the same video, in the same week after Bono was on the Joe Rogan Experience, made a complete gambine out of himself, exposed himself, was debunked over and over again for telling lies about USAID and rambling on ad nauseum about food rotting in warehouses because of the evil Trump regime. But here we are, and it is in fact Bono talking about South Africa and the infamous song that is sang by Julius Malema calling for the eradication of white people. And as I said, you could predict exactly where Bono would sit on this type of an issue, and it isn't with his own type of people. BBC News were reporting that U2's Bono was criticised for endorsing Boer the Farmer, the infamous song, right? U2's frontman said that the song, which was sung during the fight against apartheid, had its place, like music supporting the Irish Republican Army. His comments came at the start of U2's tour of South Africa, but callers to a local radio station said that the song was designed to stir up radical hatred. That's hate speech. They don't know the history at all, said one of the callers to the South African radio talk show. As predicted, Bono was called out repeatedly by numerous different outlets for promoting and endorsing and supporting this particular song. And as I said, where else would you expect him to land on such a topic? And whilst we're talking about South Africa, it might be interesting to bring up this other shameful story from Bono and his One Foundation, where the charity was accused of bullying, harassment, absolutely vile and shameful behaviour to the employees of the One Foundation. Here we see in purple the perpetrator of these vile, disgusting acts. Interesting demographics there, to be honest with you. So in a nutshell, whilst Bono was promoting the Julius Malema song, his foundation in South Africa were literally just being absolutely vile, disgusting human beings. They were evading tax, as you would expect with anything connected to Bono. So they didn't pay tax. This black chick was having her employees come over to her house under the guise of, there's a party happening, do you want to come? And when they got there, they ended up having to stand outside and be waiters and take the jackets off of the people that were actually attending the party. Kind of like Coming to America, you know, when Eddie Murphy thinks that he's getting invited to this prestigious party and he ends up parking cars for the night. Similar to that, except for it was a lot more sinister in terms of the victims of these bullying hate crimes, because what she would do with the employees of the One Foundation is have them come in and massage her feet, make tea for her, constantly berate them. These people couldn't sit comfortably at home because this bitch was ringing them constantly, harassing them. Bono ended up having to come out and apologise for the behaviour of his One Foundation and the disgusting employee that he brought in there to run the show. Evading tax, harassing people, manipulating people, bullying people. Interesting. So wouldn't everybody know and expect that Bono is tied up in numerous different shameful scandals coming out of South Africa, promoting songs that call for the eradication of a certain race? The hypocrisy knows no end with Bono, does it? But that brings us to the most shocking story coming out this week about Bono. It wasn't the fact that his One Foundation was only given 1% of their actual charity to the people in need and keeping 99% of the takings for themselves, thus becoming a multi-millionaire. It wasn't that he was promoting the eradication of white people in South Africa, that he allowed his foundation to denigrate people that were working there, humiliate them and bully them. In fact, leaving lifelong mental scars, which these people are actually suing him and his foundation for. It wasn't that. The bigger story, which I saw from Mike Benz, was that Bono's first foray into philanthropy was Live Aid. As we all know, the concerts during the 80s, which raised 100 million for famine relief in Ethiopia. You remember that? Everybody loves Live Aid and Band Aid and all that sort of stuff. BBC later reported that just 5 million of that went to food. 95 million of it actually went to funding some warlords and funding the civil war in Ethiopia. Now, BBC did report on it, but if you go back maybe 2 years before the BBC report, we have this coming out of the New Zealand Herald from Linda Herrick. Money raised for Africa goes to civil wars. Picture of Bono there, of course. Why wouldn't it be? Her latest book, Rogue Economics, studies the destabilizing effect of economic globalization, focusing in part on why more than $500 billion worth of aid sent to Africa since the 1960s failed to reach the intended destination, developing the nation's economies. A huge amount of the aid, which includes money from the United Nations, donations generated by Live Aid for Utopia, organised by Bob Geldof, and Live Aid concerts in 2005, organised by Bono, has instead served as a rogue force, notably as an important form of terrorist financing. In countries such as Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, Zimbabwe, Tanzania and Kenya, Ethiopia, for example, received 1.8 billion in foreign aid between 82 and 85, including a large contribution from Live Aid, 1.6 billion of that, she points out, was spent on buying military equipment. The money has ended up making Africa poorer and more violent because the money has been diverted towards warlords, weapons, armed invasions, she says. And that is the problem with Africa and its corruption. Now you jump over here and we have the BBC report, and it says that they have to hold firm for their Ethiopian famine report because Bob Geldof got his nose out of joint when the truth started to prevail. Whether he was knowledgeable about it beforehand or afterwards, we can't say that. But what we do know is the funds that he virtue signals so hard for to come out of your pocket to be sent to the poor people of Africa actually makes them poorer. So when we see the likes of Bob Geldof and Bono receiving knighthoods and Nobel Peace Prizes, just remember that they have made the lives of African children worse. The BBC are standing by the report that 95% of the 100 million aid raised to fight the famine in North Ethiopia in 1985 was diverted by rebels and spent on weapons, despite denials by Bob Geldof and the leading charities. Of course they're going to deny it. And I guess the crux of it would be the fact that in 1985 only 5% of the 100 million raised by charities and by the virtuous Bono and Bob Geldof actually made it to the victims of famine. Members of the TPLF, a Marxist-Leninist militia who have gone on to become the Prime Minister and the leaders of countries like Ethiopia, have gone on record stating that they did receive 65 to 95% of the money from Live Aid and that it did go towards funding the civil war. We had the CIA report on the issue back in 1985. They went on record and said that 100% categorically money from Live Aid went towards buying ammunition and funding the war in Ethiopia, thus making it an absolute nightmare for everyone who was supposed to be receiving the charity. So when the likes of Sir Bob Geldof or Bono and these people forced the BBC into an apology, remember that there is numerous people on record that say that this actually transpired, and not to take any of these apologies to be legitimate or credible. Just like when you put this into a mainstream like Google search engine or into a Grok, they're going to come back with the same BBC were forced to apologise later on. Don't believe that. Don't buy into that. I didn't think I was going to be making this video just a few days after my last video on Bono, but here we are. I thought it was very important to bring this up because it was worse than what we covered the last time. And you know what? The further you go down the rabbit hole of these absolute scumbags, I believe the more information you will uncover. And as I said in the last video, if any of it made sense, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe and share. And if you want to support the channel, you can jump over, become a member. Link will be in the description. Or you can follow me on Patreon. We do some walk and talks there exclusive for members. I'd really appreciate that. Cheers.